with the Halifax Refugee Clinic. I've been a member of Acorns for, I believe, since last summer. Yeah, so thanks again for making the time. Now, the reason we're here today is to bring people together, bring attention to a lot of the things that we would like to see changes in, to be able to take action. It is really important to sign in so we can follow up with you and get you information that you will need regarding any future events, as well as get you the recording for today's meeting, and share the platform with you. We do have a Google form that we're putting in the chat, so make sure you sign in there, or you can message your full name, phone number, and email address to staff organizers. That would be to Sid or Dolan. Now, a few people have direct messaged me their information. That's all good. I will pass it on to Sid and Dolan afterwards. I've written that all down, so you're all good there. Now we will. We'll start with the ground rules and some introductions, and then we'll go right into everything there. So ground rules, these are the rules we have for every Acorn meeting. So zero tolerance for any discriminatory comments, be respectful, no isms or phobias. We are a diverse and democratic group, so as long as you aren't violating the ground rules, everyone should have the chance to work together to create an environment where people feel comfortable, safe, sharing their ideas and asking questions. Now, on the technical side, for the sake of keeping things organized, preventing distractions, and making sure that we are able to finish on time, everyone will be on mute unless they're speaking. Now, we've set the chat so you can only direct message staff members and speakers. That way, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat and we can get back to you. We are recording this and a copy will go out to everybody. So we'll go ahead and get the leaders to introduce themselves. I believe Hannah, you could jump in there.
Hi, I'm Hannah Wood. I am the chair of the Halifax Peninsula chapter of Acorn. I'm an accessibility consultant. I'm in some of the other groups that are here today as well. And I've been involved with Acorn for maybe since May or June of 2020. So not relatively a pretty short amount of time, but I've been really impressed with what we've been able to accomplish in that time as an organization. I think there's been a huge amount of growth, and I really enjoy being part of this group. That's all for me.
And I believe we have Pat up next.
Yeah, I'm Pat Donovan. I've been with Acorn now for at least 5 years. And I'm the co-chair for Halifax Mainland with Lena as the chair. And I've been into human rights issues all my life.
Awesome, thank you,
Okay,
Pat.
who's next?
We'll jump to Ivan.
Hello, I'm Ivan. I'm very, very new to Acorn, as in really new, but I want to do my best to help. There's so many issues that Acorn's fighting for that's, almost like no-brainers. Everyone should be on board and participate, so I just want to do my best and participate.
Thank you, Ivan. And we have Lisa up next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Cameron, and I'm an active member of the Halifax Workers Action Center. I'm a very new member to Acorn as well. I first became a labor activist through the Fight for 15 and Fairness campaign, actually in Kingston, Ontario, and then I joined in Halifax as well. And it's very exciting for me to see that a lot of these groups are joining forces. Today, I'm going to be speaking to Acorn's Fair Work platform.
Awesome. And Sam.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm an illustrator and renter over in the South End. I'm a member of Acorn since last summer, and I will be talking about rent reform.
All right, awesome. Thank you, everybody. So we'll start with a little introduction on Acorn. Anybody who is not familiar with Acorn, I imagine if you're here, you're at least a little bit familiar. But Acorn is the Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now. And at our core, oh, I apologize, should have had that on mute. And at our core, we're a multi-issue organization of low and moderate income people. We're the largest tenants union in Nova Scotia, a workers union, a disability action group, and a union of community members organized and fighting for social and economic justice. The reason we are here today on this beautiful Saturday is to be able to get together, call on community groups, stakeholders, and people who are passionate about the issues that we would like to see changes in from across Nova Scotia together. It is a prime opportunity for us to be able to do that, and we have a desperate need to push a progressive platform and agenda in this province. So seeing the number of people that have made it out today, that's awesome. Really appreciate it. And again, if you're just coming in, please make sure that you're signing in into the Google form there. It's in the chat. Or if for some reason you're unable to use it, you can send a direct message with your name, email, phone number, and any group or organization or union you're representing today to either Sid or Dolan. Now, we've had some really big wins around housing and rent control in this last year, but we do need to think bigger, more multifaceted, and we can work together in bettering our communities from all angles. There's strength in numbers. We're here with people who have similar goals, and we can align our priorities this way. And present our provincial platform to you and talk about what we would like to see, how we're getting organized, and how to make our demands a reality. We've been able to see from last year that just being able to get people together, get the numbers out, and get people who are passionate about these issues out, we've been able to see changes, but again, we'd like to see more. So we encourage anyone who is interested in getting involved and to reach out to us and let us know. Now, it is worth noting that what we are going to be talking about today is solely provincial demands under the reasonable jurisdiction of the provincial government. They need to go hand in hand with other campaigns and policies at every level of government. So, this is obviously not including municipal level issues such as landlord licensing and housing for all, and federal level issues such as reining in the REITs and internet access for everybody. Now, with that being said, I'm gonna start by passing it off to Hannah to go through Acorn's People's Platform.
Yeah, so I'm going to be handling talking about COVID-19 and our response and demands to that. Obviously, it was essential for people to have homes and places to quarantine in when we got told we needed to stay in. And I think that, I'll speak to this more later, but this emergency is really a historic time, and it's difficult to deal with. And I think it's difficult for all of us personally. But it is made even more exacerbated by the problems we already had with housing and with food security and the security of individuals. So what we asked for there is pretty simple, is rent grants to tenants so that no person is paying more than 30% of their income towards rent. So a rent relief that would be part of COVID-19 supports. Because as we saw, there was all sorts of support for all sorts of groups, but where was the support for renters? So we really just, that's a huge percentage of Canadians are renters, and they should be spoken for as part of these relief packages. We also want tenant relief funds so that tenants in arrears because of COVID-19 can pay off rent debt. The CERB money and CRB money, that did not cover everyone and all circumstances. So it's important to realize some people were left behind by that, and their rent may have been just unmanageable even before the pandemic. And then with cut hours where you work too much to get CERB, but you don't work enough to as much as you used to afford things. There was a lot of people who fell through the cracks there. So we definitely wanted basically just a form of a bailout there for renters, and by effect, a bailout for landlords, because they would be getting their rent paid through this process, and for people to be housed. So we, at the beginning, we did have people being put up in hotels, and we have continuously demanded that that be reinstated, and that also more shelter beds be open. And there was some success with some of these things in terms of having the rent eviction ban and the rent control cap, which will be spoken to a bit more later. But we need to continue to fight to make sure that no one is left behind during COVID, because this is an ongoing state of emergency that affects literally everyone, bottom to top. But we are seeing how it's affecting groups that are chronically left behind even more. So renters need to be represented, and I think we've done a good job continuing to push that agenda. And unfortunately, it looks like we're going to continue to need to, because the pandemic persists. And then I am passing it over to Pat to talk about fair fees, another one of our platform points. Pat, are you ready? Maybe I surprised him. There he is.
There we go. I just had a little problem with the muting. That's all. Anyway, right now, they predatory lenders like Money Mart, Easy Finance, they're charging over 400% interest a year. Now, they're not regulated by the federal government like a normal bank is, but they do have provincial legislation that controls them. And we need to get that interest rate down. What happens is a person ends up in a little bit of trouble, you know, when they're on minimum wage. They need to buy some medicine if they don't have health care or something, and they're forced to go to these places. And then they're forced to pay back this money at like for $200, you got to pay $20 on top of that. And as you pay it back, you end up short on your paycheck again. So you have to go borrow even more. And it's a continuous cycle where you're getting trapped into this until it gets to the point where your paycheck won't even cover what you owe. Now, I have seen this happen to people. And once you're in that, it's hard to get out. You got to go bankrupt, you know, or else you're paying all your pay. You have no money left for anything else. So we got to get them to bring down their rates lower. They shouldn't be allowed to charge more than 5% on the loan. So 5% on $200 would be $10 and such on. And maybe even lower rate than that. But we do have to get the provincial government and maybe even the federal government, if they're willing to take up the challenge, to do something about these predatory lenders, because they are destroying the lives of people. So next is, I don't have my list up here.
Next is Ivan talking about raising the rates.
Yeah, so I like to discuss income assistance and how it's inadequate. It's not enough for people that are on it. And it's we're living in Nova Scotia where I believe it's 1 in 4 children go to bed hungry. They're in poverty. So with income assistance, 100% of the families that rely on government support live in poverty. So if the new premier is making over $200,000 a year, that's which means our premier makes more in 1 month than they expect people on income assistance or disability to live off of for a whole year. That's mind-blowing. He can get $200,000 a year and expect people to live off 10,000. It's a COVID relief for social assistance workers, for social assistance recipients, was $50. Everyone got $50. So, and the pandemic's been going on for over a year. And it's, when you think about it, if you help those that are poor, it's going to help mental health. There's not going to be so many people stressing over how are we going to get food, pay the bills. It'd probably lower the crime rate. No one has to sell drugs and prostitute because they have money. And you don't put people that are disabled and low income in positions or predicaments that could result in them making wrong decisions. So it helps everyone to raise the rates on income assistance. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you so much, Ivan. I think it's Lisa up next.
Yeah, great, Ivan. Thanks for sharing that. So to talk about fair work, wages and rent, workers' rights and tenant rights are very closely related. The people most affected by changes to the basic employment standards in Nova Scotia are likely also struggling with rental costs, especially given that the minimum wage here is only $12.55 per hour, and the cost of a one-bedroom apartment on average in Halifax is $1,472 a month. So first, I want to talk about the minimum wage. There are a lot of misconceptions about the minimum wage, such as when the minimum wage goes up, so does the cost of living, and that businesses suffer because of it. But the minimum wage couldn't possibly be the culprit when it comes to the high cost of living in Halifax, because it has barely changed in the last 10 years. And in fact, the purchasing power has actually decreased, yet the cost of living continues to skyrocket. The truth is that when low-wage workers receive an increase in their wages, that money is directly invested back into the local economy, which in turn actually creates jobs and economic growth. Employment in traditionally low-wage sectors like restaurant, retail, and hospitality has gone up in places like Seattle after they increased their minimum wage to $15. Realistically, businesses cannot survive if nobody has enough money to buy things. I think that's a pretty simple fact. Unfortunately, such a low provincial minimum wage is actually putting a downwards pressure on all wages, and more people now are struggling to make ends meet in Nova Scotia. And there are more misconceptions about the minimum wage. For example, minimum wage workers are often portrayed as teenagers who are working in small businesses while living at home to save money. But according to Stats Canada, 32.6% of minimum wage workers in the province are over the age of 35. There's also a disproportionate number of minimum wage workers who are women and racialized and Indigenous workers. And these unlivable wages only further entrench communities into cycles of poverty. So shifting gears, the pandemic has shown us exactly why we need paid sick days. There is no reason why a frontline worker should be afraid to lose income because of COVID. Anyone who's ever worked an hourly or low-wage job knows the pressure to come in when you're sick. Because for a lot of people, you're actually risking a significant amount of your income just to take the day off. At the onset of the pandemic, former Minister of Labor, Labi Kazula, said that rather than legislate paid sick days, we should instead just trust employers to do the right thing. But this clearly isn't working. I think this attitude is really dangerous. Workers need this right guaranteed. So following from that, employers should also not be able to request medical documentation to substantiate short-term illnesses of workers. When a worker needs to get a medical note, it forces them out of bed into hospitals and doctors' offices where risk of contagion is high, which poses public health concerns and burdens our healthcare system at large. And this is all just to satisfy an employer's administrative need. It's really not worth the risk, even when it comes to common colds. So in a pandemic, this is especially dangerous. We believe that no worker should have to live in poverty, and that collective action like tenant organizing and workplace organizing are essential in making sure that our voices are heard. If you think about just say, for example, Sid and I taking our complaints high up and asking the government to please enact rent control legislation, would we be effective? But if all of us join together and stand united and raise our voices, I do think that these changes are possible. So this is why our Fair Work platform is demanding the following: an immediate raise to the minimum wage to $15 an hour for all workers, the introduction of 10 paid sick days for all workers, and restrictions on an employer's ability to request medical notes. By no means is this a conclusive list of what needs to change, but these are very important starting points. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Lisa. I'm Sam. I'm a renter in the South End and a member of Acorn. Obviously, housing is a huge part of our platform and almost certainly why you're familiar with Acorn. Access to safe, healthy, and affordable housing is desperately needed in our communities. Until temporary rent controls were won in November of 2020, tenants were receiving rent increases of 10, 25, 50, even up to 120%. Recent data from rentals.ca shows the rent for a one bedroom in the HRM has gone up by 20.7%. Over the last year, I'm sure everyone has seen the horror stories of ludicrous $600 increases and how the combination of high rents and low vacancies has seen the HRM's unhoused population double in just the last year. It's great that we won this year's 2% rent cap and rent eviction ban, but these rent controls are temporary, and even permanent rent control doesn't solve the issue of lack of affordable housing stock. And that's not even tackling the legislative issues with residential tenancies or the massive maintenance and waitlist issues in public housing. While necessary, rent control isn't meant to be a standalone policy, but one of a suite of complementary policies that address the range of issues relevant to safe and equitable housing. That's why we're proposing a comprehensive housing plan to tackle this from all angles. So we need real rent control. So we want to introduce permanent rent control and limit the amount a landlord can raise the rent every 12 months on an occupied or vacant residential unit to a certain percentage per year. This is already the case in several other provinces. We want the raise to be based on existed AARIA calculations, so basically tied to the cost of living and the consumer price index, which would be 1 to 2% annually, usually. We want residential tenancies reform in the form of a full review of the Residential Tenancy Act rather than by section as it comes up, with consultation with tenant-led community groups. We want to ban landlords from adding clauses to the standard form of lease. There should be a standardized set of rules you can check off, like currently for if parking is included, etc. We've been getting a lot of complaints about ludicrous clauses being tacked on to leases that are unfair to renters. We want to ban fixed term leases. So currently fixed term leases allow landlords to skirt the Residential Tenancies Act and evict tenants without just cause on the premise of not renewing the lease. Other provinces don't have these. It allows landlords to discriminate against people on income assistance, with poor credit, or anyone they see to be a risky or undesirable renter. Landlords abuse these leases and keep tenants on for years at a time until they eventually choose not to renew when a tenant causes trouble by asking for repairs or service requests. These don't exist in any other province, and there's no reason why Nova Scotia should allow landlords to get away with no-fault evictions. There isn't a benefit to fixed-term leases that can't be covered by, say, month-to-month renting. So those are our demands to protect renters. Here are our additional proposals to create more affordable housing. We want inclusionary zoning. Mandate all new residential developments include at least 30% affordable housing geared towards income. This should combat gentrification and our rising homelessness. It will create more housing stock without stopping development, and incentivize developers to develop for us. We want right of first refusal legislation to give tenants and current occupants of a building the right to purchase their building or home before the building goes on the market to others if it's being sold. And to facilitate this, we want a provincial grant program to assist tenants with the cost of a down payment in order to create more kind of co-op style housing. We also want to adjust the current provincial rent supplement program so that supplements are individualized to cover the actual cost of tenants' rent, not just up to the average market rate. We want to increase funding for the Metro Regional Housing Authority to build and repair public housing units. There are currently 4,000 people on the wait list, so obviously what we have currently is nowhere near acceptable or enough. We want the province to give cities the power to conduct bylaw inspections in public housing units. Since although public housing is ostensibly held to actual standards, there's no way to enforce or inspect that. leading to the terrible conditions in much of public housing and no recourse for the residents. We also want to expand eligibility for public housing so no immigration status is limited from getting access. People whose refugee claims are eventually accepted can wait up to 4 years for that verdict. So where do they live in the meantime? Where do people live when they're waiting for their permanent resident status to tick over? Like, just because you aren't a citizen or permanent resident doesn't mean you don't have to live somewhere, right? We're calling this a people's platform because this was written by everyday people. Landlords and developers, big businesses, banks, lobbyists have money and power, so they get their platform and agendas pushed. That's why we've created a platform by and for people, and it's why we need to get organized and fight for this so we can have our voices heard. What we lack in money and institutional power, we make up for in numbers, so we need to put our numbers to use and fight to see these demands met, which is what Lena is going to go over right now. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam, and everyone for going over those. All right. So like Sam said, housing is the bulk of our platform and demands because of the scale of the crisis. Again, this was a crisis before. COVID has only exacerbated everything. We do need, and we know that there are no easy solutions, but we need to take a multifaceted approach to what we are fighting for. And together we've created these demands to fight poverty in Nova Scotia from every angle. We know there's millions of other things under these points or related to them that need to be addressed as well, that are covered by some of the groups present. And we're excited to show up and help push the agenda forward. Now, another big reason why we're here today is we have a new premier who is unelected and so therefore very vulnerable. And there's a provincial election coming up. And so it's a prime opportunity to push for these issues and win, and to get people elected who support these demands and will fight to get them through the legislature. Now, obviously, we organize all the time, and we know that electoral politics can't be aren't the be all and end all of our efforts, but it is a huge opportunity. Even if you're not able to vote, I myself am not able to because I'm a permanent resident and not yet a citizen. However, there are things that we can all do to be able to push for the agendas that we would like to see change in. So for those who are just two things for those who are just coming in. Please make sure you sign into the Google sign-up sheet. If for some reason you're unable to do that, you can send a direct message to either Sid or Dolan with your name, phone number, email, and if you're here representing a group or organization or union of some sort, make sure to include that as well. And it is important to know what riding you are in and who your representatives are. So we will have a screen share coming up here from Sid in just a moment. And that's a riding map of the HRM and Antigonish, where a majority of our members, of Acorn's members are. So there we go. Those are the major ridings in HRM. You can look up your MLA or district in the link that's going to be attached in the chat right now. Yes. Now, what does each party, where does each party stand on our platform? Now, individual candidates in terms of parties can vary quite a bit. For example, two liberals such as Ian Rankin and Stephen McNeil are quite different from one another. So make sure you are doing your research on your local candidates and not just voting based on the party that they belong to. Now, typically the NDP have endorsed most of our demands. They have been fighting alongside a lot of our groups here for these changes. They meet with us regularly. They show up to our events and they speak in support of our demands. There are comparable candidates within the Liberal Party and even within the PC that do give us the time of day. However, compared to the Liberals, who have all refused except for Brendan Maguire. Now, That being said, while obviously this isn't a political endorsement, again, it is best for everybody to do the research on the people running in their ridings and in their districts, and to elect people that agree with the changes that we would like to see. Now, what we're going to go over is the margins by which each party won and lost last time. There we go. So as you can see here with Sue LeBlanc, voter turnout was less than 50% of all eligible voters in the area. And the margin by which Sue won is quite slim. It's just about 300 and some votes. That's less than 500. That can unfortunately easily be overcome by voters of other parties. So we need to make sure that, again, show up to vote if you can. If you can't, organize people in your community to go out and vote for the candidates that you believe in. And we'll move next to Claudia Chender. Again, voter turnout is not super high. We'd like to see more. And the margin by which Claudia won are just less than 300 votes. Gary Burrell, again, we can see better with the, we'd like to see better with the voter turnout, and the margins by which Gary won are not even 1,000 there. Just again, a few hundred, 600 or so. And finally, Patricia Arab. So that's someone who also, you know, Patricia is a liberal and won by a very slim margin. So meaning if we're able to get people out to vote for the people that we believe in, we can also get people out to vote for to vote out people that we don't want to see in office. Patricia Arab is a prime example because so Patricia has made it abundantly clear directly that she would not like to meet with us to discuss our demands, whereas some others, again, are more open to that and agree with what we have, what we would like to see change in. There's a few conflicts of interest that are there for Patricia Arab, mainly that there are people in her family who are in real estate. Now, I won't go too deep into those. Again, I would just highly recommend that everybody do their own research and make up their own decisions on what they would like to do. So don't listen to me, do your research and make your decisions from there on your own using your research. Now, again, this is not a political endorsement of any sort. It is in everyone's best interest to go out and do their own research. So now that we know who is running where and where you should be putting the pressure, how do we do that? So we need to make our demands an issue. Politicians need to be talking about the problems and our demands. So for example, they need to be talking about the rates of income assistance and how they're too low and how there needs to be a raise. That's how we know whether or not they support it, or we need to make them defend it, or defend why they don't support it if they don't actually support it. Now, Stephen McNeil's comments on rent control being a philosophical difference was a great polarizing point for us and helped us to mobilize angry people in support of rent control. Now, we keep things an issue by being in the press constantly. So while social media is great for outreach, education, and awareness, but that's not where people running for office or people who are in office get their news from. So we need to make sure we're getting the press's attention through our actions and mobilizing people and communities around the issues that matter to them most and to come out in support of that. Now, as a few people have mentioned, there's power in numbers. So we need people. We need to make sure that people are getting organized, that people are mobilizing and fighting for it, and showing all political hopefuls that it won't be super easy for them to just get into office and keep their jobs if they are not giving us what we are demanding for. So join the fight with Acorn. Again, I've said this a million times, so I apologize. However, please make sure you're signing into the Google sign-up sheets there. If you are not able to do so for any sort of technical reasons, you can send a direct message to either Sid or Dolan with your information, that being your name, phone number, the group or organization or union you might be representing today, as well as your email address. So we do need to get people mobilized, and we need to get groups mobilized, and we need to get everybody fighting for these demands. You don't need, again, you do not need to be eligible to vote to be politically engaged and to mobilize your community. Now, we do have over 8,000 members across Nova Scotia, many of them in these crucial districts that we had shown previously on the map, where we can get progressives elected. Now, a few things that you can do, or we can all do to be part of being able to get progressives elected, is we need to phone bank. People need to come out to our actions, get engaged, spread awareness, and again, get the press's attention. Flyer and block captains to poster or flyer in their neighborhoods and in their buildings and so on. And my apologies, just going through the notes there. And people who want to join Acorn and to organize their buildings, neighborhoods, or blocks to make these community issues, you spread the awareness on them. Now, with that being said, please use the sign-in sheet. There is another one there that's for volunteering. If you are interested in doing so, please sign in there, or you can also send a direct message again to our organizers, Sid or Dolan, and we will be in touch ASAP in terms of how you can be a little bit more involved. Now, there's a lot we can do as individuals, but another huge reason we're here is to connect as groups and like-minded organizations. So I'm going to pass it along to Hannah Wood to talk more on that point.
Hi, everybody. I first want to thank everyone who's an individual here and everyone who's representing a group for being here. All of the groups that are represented here today have done really good work in this province, and we should always remember that we don't have anything good that we have because an altruistic politician gave it to us. We have it because of the fight of everyday people. I think that sometimes some of these fights can feel too big, and they can feel impossible, and they can feel like it is hard to fight against a large working machine. But I think something we have learned from the COVID pandemic in this historic time, because even the pandemic of 1919 did not go so worldwide scale as this one. So this really is historic. We've learned how quickly things can change when the politicians and the machine want it to. We've learned how much public pressure can do, even in relatively small numbers. As I was saying in my prior point, we obviously did some lead up work, and a lot of groups supported us in getting that temporary rent control, and as well there were shelter beds along with that deal, and there was a cap on increases. But really the big turning point for that was the rally that we had at the Grand Parade with just over 300 people. That is not actually a huge amount of people. If we even had 1% turnout from every group that's represented here for every single initiative we had, we would overwhelm any sitting government that we had on our issues with our sheer numbers. We need those numbers to show up for things. And even if there are only small events with small groups of people, those still have impact because it raises the public awareness of the different groups and of our group and of our platform. And maybe people just see us protesting on a corner, they see a sign, then they go home and they Google us and they see that we are actually fighting for things that are in their best interests. We are really in a historic moment, especially with Nova Scotia. I think that people are extremely fed up with the continuously declining quality of living here as per how hard they work. People are sick of making such low wages for such a high cost of living here, not being able to afford to live where they'd want to live, or live in houses that are just even suitable and decent and dignified to live in. The conditions that people are living in are subpar. And all of these groups here represent some niche issues concerning their groups, but I think every group here can agree that we believe housing is a fundamental right. Access to education is a fundamental right. Access to food, healthcare, mental health care are fundamental rights, and workers' rights for representation, fair pay, and paid sick days are fundamental rights. So no matter what kind of niche issues we may have, we really have the same ideology about protecting and taking care of people. So there's no reason that we can't all throw in together on the interests that serve us all. And we're also more powerful as a large group, as a collaboration, as a confederation of organizations of like-minded interests. And we also have a very particular situation here with an unelected leader. I mean, think about how people would be reacting to this if this was normal times, that we have an unelected person sitting as our premier. It's outrageous. We should really be using this to put pressure on Rankin that if he wants to be there, he needs to prove that he can be there and do something different. And we also should always remember that we're not dealing with geniuses. We're not dealing with the slickest politicians in the world. We're not dealing with some sort of like game of cards, TV like personalities. We're dealing with very average folks that want to hold positions and want to stay in them. So we need to appeal to their want to stay in their high paid jobs and have that attention and do that work by putting the boots to them on what they need to do for us to stay there. So I really would call out to all of these groups to, act in solidarity with each other. I think we've already seen a lot of that. Lots of the groups here, show up to things and vice versa. But if we really want to get some action, if we really want to represent our large numbers properly, we need to get onto a platform together, and we need to continually show up and show those numbers that we represent, because for every one of us here who is very involved, we are representing hundreds of people who are not, but who really do share the same interests and values. So we have to speak not just for ourselves, but those who are not involved, and be an advocate for the people. We are also, with these agenda items, anytime that we don't get something, we still made the conversation about that thing. We still turned the tide of the political discourse to our topics. Something that I talk about a lot with people is the Overton window, which is the concept of what are we allowed to speak about in public? What are we allowed to propose? And every time we call for another one of these issues and we get that on the platform and we force a response, we widen that Overton window to our issues. So I really just want to encourage everyone to get more involved with Acorn and each other's groups. I think Acorn has a really solid, both a membership base that shows up, that does things, that organizes, that has a lot of leaders and a lot of participation, but also we have a good background in successes and in wins. So I'm really looking to see that solidarity between all these groups on all the issues that we share in common, so that we can use that people power and the power of the common person against what is really a very small elite. And they're not smarter than us, they don't know better, and they don't live on the street level of the real problems, and we do. So we need to feel confident in that power, confident in our knowledge and in those we represent, and fight together for the changes that we want to see. A lot of the things that have been talked about by other members, I think are, we think of them as fairly common sense, but if we don't push these issues, we won't get them. And if we don't articulate them and articulate them with enough, response and enough people behind them using that people power, we're not going to get them done, as common sense as they may seem. And I think also in this time of emergency, people are more open to different ideas and to different ways of doing things. People want to see change, and they're willing to hear suggestions from places and people that they might not have heard them from before. I mean, I think that the entire situation with HMA having to build basically shacks for people to live in so that people don't freeze to death here in our winter is a show that people have just become completely desperate for change. So I really see, although we technically have a premier, he is an unelected person sitting in a seat. Really, the power is ours to push him to be the kind of leader we want him to be. And if he wants to keep this seat when an election is called, he's really going to have to show up and do something for people, because not only those who are involved in these groups, but everyone who doesn't speak up really do share our views. We need to feel confident that we are really representing the views and the wants of the average person. So we need to feel confident in that. And there is a role for everyone. I know sometimes things like political actions where you're physically present out on the street can seem intimidating to people, but there is a role for every different type of personality. There's a role for every different type of ability. There's postering, there's boosting us on social media, there is showing up at events, there's having meetings with politicians and city employees. There are places for all our strengths. So I really do want to formally ask that all the groups here sign on to our platform and work in solidarity with us on this platform. We will all still be able to do all the things that we do in our individual groups and push those agendas, but we will be stronger together, acting as a conglomerate to ask for what we want. You know, when the mining industry wants something done, they all join together. They might have beefs. They might have people who are hired or fired from this company or that. They might have some different ideas, but none of those matter when they want a bill passed that allows greater mining access. So we need to look at it the same way and join together upon the things that we agree with and find those roles for ourselves. So I just ask that everyone join in on our platform and sign up and do what they can. We really have as well, I feel, very supportive chapters for bringing people in, setting them up with community resources that they may need and helping them become stronger advocates. So that is all from me. That's my little pitch. And I'm going to pass it on to Debbie, who is going to speak for her organization, followed by some other members speaking for theirs. And thank you all again for being here.
I'm just gonna see if you can unmute. Oh, one sec. Tech issues. Debbie, are you able to unmute the mic there? Let me see.
Technical difficulties, hold on.
I've got
it.
Gotta love Zoom. So hi, everybody. I'm really excited to see so many people here today. My name's Debbie Richardson. I was just recently elected as president of the Halifax-Dartmouth District Labor Council. I have been with the Labor Council on the executive for over 10 years. So I'm familiar with all of the work everyone is doing. One of my goals, like Hannah said, is trying to get all of these groups together working on the same projects so that we have a clear and consistent message and that we're all able to support each other. So I have been having several meetings with representatives from the Fight for 15, Workers Action Center, Acorn, the Federation of Labor, and we're all really committed to working together and making our voices heard. So I really appreciate you guys having this presentation today. I think the platform looks great, and we will definitely be taking it to our delegates to ask for any feedback and for their endorsement. And you have our commitment that we will do everything that we can to support all of the things in the platform.
Oh, sorry, I forgot I'm doing the next intro as well. Sakura is up next. Thanks very much. Thank you very much. Probably have the same short delay just to unmute her. Bear with us. We're making great time though, people. Great time.
Thank you. I'm here. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I'm Saku with the Fight for 15 and Fairness. And I just wanted to, I'm really excited to be here, excited to see so many people. And of course, we've been very supportive of Acorn's demands in the past. And so, I have to take this to my group, but I'm confident that we'll sign on and, really happy for all the support that Acorn members have also given. I just want to say a few things real quick about raising the minimum wage because I just think these are important points to get across. So the idea of substantially raising the minimum wage has gained a lot of traction throughout North America in recent years. This momentum has been magnified by the success of Fight for 15 campaigns in BC, Alberta, and Ontario, which have shown that minimum wage increases do not result in massive job losses, but rather have strengthened local economies and decreased poverty. These myths about the consequences of raising the minimum wage, some of which Lisa went over earlier, are pervasive, even amongst minimum wage earners. So like Acorn, a lot of the things that we do is canvas and talk to people on the ground. And, what we're trying to do, like Acorn, is lift the expectations people have, right? That there are actually no reasonable societal reasons not to give in to these demands because everyone benefits. So these facts are bearing out in our favor. In fact, within 6 months of increasing the minimum wage by $2.40 an hour in Ontario in one go, the province experienced their lowest unemployment rate in 18 years. So all of these kind of doom and gloom theories that you have about massive job losses and everything, they just are not true. In the United States, these economic insights have been so mainstream that now the entire country is considering a $15 minimum wage, which is $18.91 in Canada, right? And several states, including California, Florida, Illinois, and Massachusetts, have already pledged to reach a $15 minimum wage. So I believe in a lot of people here that the minimum wage should actually be a living wage, which is much more than $15 an hour, because obviously you should make enough to live and to buy things that are necessities for living, especially with the higher costs of living. And that's one of the reasons why Fight for 15 full-heartedly supports the calls for rent control and other things like that, because rent is completely out of control these days. But the $15 is the demand that has a continental movement around it for now, though I suspect this will increase with time, with the same logistics supporting those, or same logics, sorry, supporting those demands. Like Acorn, the Fight for 15 and Fairness has more than just a minimum wage increase demand. Like Ivan explained earlier, when social assistance increases, everyone benefits. And we've actually found that social assistance actually does increase when minimum wages increase as well, because of course they always want it just below the minimum wage. And so we have like increased rates of social assistance also as part of our demands. And yeah, I don't know, that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to pitch people on the arguments for the Fight for 15, because like I said, I know that these myths are pervasive. So any opportunity I have to talk about them. And I'm so happy that both that and paid sick days, which also has every good reason behind it for our society, have made it into the demands for Acorn. And yeah, that's it. So next person.
Oh, so the next person is Nan. Nan, whenever you're ready, someone will unmute you. I think I have unmuted you, Nan. I think you can.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, just a second. When I clicked on that, I lost my words. So hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation or the time here today to speak to you. So I'm the president of CUPE Nova Scotia, and I am at times asked why I'm present in conversations and places that are talking about poverty, housing, social services. I would say that the McNeil government has worked hard to message to the public that union members have all of the things. And for some of us, that's true. Union members have worked hard to bargain for fair wages, benefits, working conditions. However, many of our members live in and retire in poverty. It is the responsibility, CUPE believes, of every Nova Scotian and of every union member in Nova Scotia to rise and to bring others with us. I am close to the end of my mandate. We have our convention coming up the end of May, and in the time that remains, we will continue to be a strong voice for pharmacare for all. The federal liberals and conservatives voted against it. Our fight continues. We're not giving up. The fight for paid sick days also continues. Perhaps with a new premier, we'll see some compassion for Nova Scotians. I guess time will deliver that information to us. We are predominantly, CUPE Nova Scotia and CUPE National, a public sector union. Most of our locals will be bargaining this year. We would ask you to remember us when we're looking for public support. Like many Nova Scotians, we were and are an integral part of the pandemic fight. McNeil often called us heroes, while in the next breath disrespecting us. We will see what the government meant when we're at the bargaining table with the use so loosely of the word hero. We have childcare workers, environmental service workers, continuing care assistants, and many who struggle every day to get by on what they make. They are there. There are so many that work in more than one job just to have enough income. And of course, union members are not alone in this plight. Some of you may have seen the recent fight for workers at Wind Park Villa in Truro. It's unfortunate that we have employers that live in the dark ages. Union workplaces are safer, and a safe worker benefits everyone. Our fight for Wind Park workers will continue. I am willing to, and I'm going to take your list of demands to our executive board for discussion. So I want to thank you for this moment of your time. And when you think of union, remember, we are part of your community. We provide the services in your community. We volunteer in communities. We volunteer at food banks, in shelters, with kids' sports, as firefighters. Remember when you think union that your fight is our fight too. And together, we're always stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Nan. Okay, I think we're back to our closing with Lena. Oh, just a plug for the event, I think on the 9th, we are looking to have as many people out as possible on the morning of the 9th so we can demand our platform. And so we need numbers for that. We also need, people to make signs and different types of volunteering related to that. So maybe, can you put up the link there again, Sid, for volunteers? So maybe we can get some specific volunteers for that. This is the first legislature sitting in a year. So, not only do we have an unelected premier, we have had a suspension of democracy for about a year that is finally returning. So let's show that not only are we invested in our democracy continuing to run properly, but let's show up and ask for it to even improve. All right, we have another form there. Great. So if you're interested in all forms of volunteering, but also specifically for Tuesday, please check that out. And now, Lena.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everybody, for making it out today, for signing in. Please don't forget to do that. And yeah, for all the speakers, thank you very much for everything that you've said. So we will be sending out copies of our platform to community groups, unions, stakeholders, student groups, and anyone who will be signing on in support of these demands. Now, it is super important that we all come together to show up for each other's actions and push for this on all fronts. We're stronger together. There's power in numbers, and we can win these demands if we fight together. Now, with that said, again, use the form to indicate if you're a member of a group, union, organization, anything of the sort that you're here representing, and don't forget to sign on. Now, for everyone coming out on Tuesday, please keep in mind that we definitely will be respecting social distancing, and masks will be asked of people coming out. I'm pretty sure that everyone has their masks with them, so nothing to be concerned about there. So please come out so we can shove our demands in the faces of the MLAs. Nothing more fun than that. Because the majority of them, the Liberal and the PCs especially, have been refusing to meet with us and each other since the legislature has not sat in a year, we need to get these demands out in front of them. So again, anybody who's able to make signs, anybody who would like to volunteer in any way, just to make sure that this is as successful as possible, please do let us know in the sign-up sheet. Now, other groups are encouraged to take up the mic and speak on what they want to see changed along with the provincial demands that we have in place, and to show up in solidarity for each other so we can push through and have another win. So again, thank you everybody for coming out. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to sign in that form there. Not just for volunteering, also just the sign up sheet, so we can stay in touch with you. This way we'll also be able to get the recording out to you. We'll send you a copy of our platform, and we can get as many people as possible behind all of these really important issues. So I think before we end things, quickly there, Sid, if you're still there, is there anything else we needed to bring up, or are we all good to go?
I think we did want to remind everybody on the call, for any actions that any of your groups have planned, please let us know, and we will be in solidarity to your actions as well. And I think, Nan made a really good point too, that we need to, as the public, support as well, in our conversations with other people, in the influence we exert as individuals. We need to show that solidarity and support in all avenues of our lives. So do let us know in what ways we can show up for your groups, because I think everyone here for Acorn has a tremendous amount of respect for all the groups represented here and the work that you do, and we can all build something better together. So I just wanted to remind that we are here for you as well.
All right, awesome. I think that covers it. So thanks again, everybody, for coming out. Please do reach out to us, or sign in the volunteer sheet there, so we can get more people on board and make sure that we see these changes happen. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. And just a reminder, Tuesday, 9:30, outside Province House. It's on Facebook. Everybody here is going to get an email. You know me. We're all going to be in touch. Fantastic. Thank you so much to everybody for coming out.